Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Selena Mendy Singleton. I am with the Montgomery County Council. I am the Racial Equity Manager. And Bertha?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Berta Lidia Cersosimo. I am the Council's Multicultural Communications and Outreach Manager.
So we are going to get started this evening. The African American cohort of the Anti-Hate Task Force will be presenting this evening. We are going to start with Council President Evan Glass. Oh, there he is, okay. And then the cohort will present. We'll have a discussion with questions and answers. Council Member Will Girondo, the chair of the Education and Culture Committee, will also give some remarks. And then we will close with the Council President. Mr. President, please.
Well, thank you very much, Selena, and good evening, everybody. I'm glad you are all here. I know that members of the African American and Black cohort have been working extremely hard over the last number of months to talk about this issue. And this is an issue that, unlike some others, has not been one that just came about. We know that this is an issue that has been facing members of this community since 1619, quite frankly. And there's a lot of work to do. And so I appreciate all the work that you have been doing. I look forward to hearing your recommendations later today. And I also just want to give a quick shout out to Tiffany and Ron for doing an incredible job this morning promoting the cohort and bringing attention to the work group here. And if you didn't see their interview on Fox 5, I recommend you check it out. They did a wonderful job. Selena, back to you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start the presentation with Miss Lisa Taylor.
Good evening, everyone. My name is, Selena said, is Lisa Taylor, and I am one of the members of the cohort for the African American, Black American cohort. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation. Let me know when you can see what I can see.
We can see it.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and all right. So first, we wanted to talk about who we are. So these are the members of the Black and African American Anti-Hate Task Force cohort for African Americans. So we have Mr. Ron Wright, Ms. Tiffany Kelly, Reverend James Boney, Jacqueline Denard, Joseph Hooks, myself, and Jim Stowe. Okay, and I want to give you an overview of what we'll be talking about tonight. First, we'll be talking about who we are, the past and the present, the Montgomery County community, the Montgomery County criminal justice system, and we're also going to delve into Montgomery County public schools. And I should say before we continue on that if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or to reserve them for the end of our presentation. That way we can make sure we get this move along smoothly. So who are we? African American history began in the 16th century with Africans from West and Central Africa being sold to European slave traders and transported across the Atlantic to the Western Hemisphere, where they were sold as slaves. When we think about who we are 14.2% of the total population for the United States, according to the US Census, and 18.4% for Montgomery County. As you may know, the census does updates every year. And so we know from 2023, we are at 18.4%. We are the third largest racial ethnic group in the United States after white Americans, Hispanic, and Latino Americans. And about 12% of the population for African Americans and Black folk were born in foreign countries. So we also want to share who we are in terms of our religion. So the predominant religion for African Americans and Black Americans is Protestant throughout the country. And when we reached out to the faith-based folks from the Montgomery County, we asked how many, what the makeup was for the county. They couldn't tell us, but we had specific a request about how many African Americans may be participatory in the Muslim faith. And the response was that we have about 15 mosques in the county. So this is a picture that kind of tells the story of who we are in terms of where we came from. And in this picture, we see the effect slavery has had on us over time, in that we as African Americans and Black Americans were free labor for slavery, which enabled America to grow into a world power because we allowed the sale, we encouraged and worked for the sale of tobacco and cotton on the world market. And so we worked along for many years for free, and then we were freed. And then even with that, we weren't able to obtain a lot of economic equality and other equalities because we still had the vestiges of past discrimination. And so the original sin charged with hate that continues to be the gateway of hate bias incidences is basically a part of our history. And so I know Council President Glass talked about this, but we are and have been over the history of America marginalized. And so we see that translated into hate bias incidences. Excuse me. And here we have just a pictorial presentation of time of the various points in history, how America treated Africans and African Americans, beginning with being sold as slaves in 1619, working through the peonage of sharecropping, basically having Black folks work for free for the benefit of America. And then we talk about Jim Crow segregation, separate but not equal. And then we've also seen from 1882 to 1967, numerous lynchings of Blacks by whites. And in fact, we know that there are many efforts, over 200 times, for Congress to outlaw lynching, and every time the bill had failed. And now we see currently from 1619 to present, the systemic brutality of African and African Americans and Black Americans by police and law enforcement. So if you look at from a nationwide perspective, we've seen 1,944 police killings of Black people between the years of 2013 to 19. I mean, when those killings occurred, only 3% of the officers had charges brought against them, and fewer than 1% of the police were convicted. And we believe that a lot of the new focus on this has been because we have cell phones, and that because of cell phones, it gives us a moment in time to review the bad behavior, bad acts of brutality. And so because of cell phones and the advent of cell phones, we've seen a greater interest in holding police accountable. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we did in our process for the basis for our recommendations. We did a survey, we held listening sessions, and we reviewed available data that was online, and we'd actually asked some of the officials from Montgomery County for their input. In our survey, we had several questions, but we wanted to highlight two. One is, do you feel that you've been a victim of racism or discrimination in Montgomery County? And we saw that nearly 80% had answered the question, yes, they do, with roughly 25% saying, no, they don't. And then we asked, where did the racism or discrimination occur? And as you can see from this bar graph, the top two locations where discrimination occurred were schools or public places, or schools or place of education. And then that was the second to the top. And then the top was stores, restaurants, and public places. We also had input from the Black Ministers Conference of Montgomery County, Maryland, which is an alliance of predominantly Black churches in Montgomery County that have joined together to promote the causes of the Black community. And when we sat down and talked with them, this was some of the recommendations that they had. And I'll just highlight a few because I know the presentation will be available, but they recommended, just submit a fight to awareness of the impacts of racism and discrimination and strong enforcement of race hate bias laws. They also talked about timely reporting of race and hate bias incidents and holding the person or group or organization accountable, and maybe even increasing the penalties for hate incidences. And of course, we've all seen the news and we know what happens and recently in our history in Montgomery County, and that is we see a vandalization that's happening in our churches. And so these are just some examples of the vandalizations we've had. Signs have been vandalized. Black was cut out of a sign. We saw Black swastika was painted, and churches have been defaced. And so again, this is a message of who we are as Montgomery County and the chilling effect it has to the Black community and the African-American community when they see an open act of hate in the places where they worship. Then looking at the data, we're going to turn to the data from the state of Maryland. This is every year they do a bias report. So this is from 2022. And in their bias report, as you can see with our yellow arrow, Montgomery County by far has the highest number of incidents. In part, that could be because people underreport, but it does show how there has been a significant number of instances of hate bias. In fact, if you look at the percentage of all the reports that were made, Montgomery County makes up 34.2%. And then the other thing we wanted to highlight from the bias report was the type of bias incidents we see. And again, this chart will show you that of all of the bias incidents reports that we see, a large majority of the reports are involving anti-Black or African-American hate. In fact, if you look at this graph, it shows that the bias incidents are 3 times as they're 3 times as much as any of the others. And the second highest, of course, is with anti-Semitic activities. And so we see that the largest, in terms of this report, incidents of hate is anti-Black, anti-African-American.
Please repeat that.
Yes. So the largest percentage of reporting for bias incidences in the state of Maryland is anti-Black, anti-African-American, and it's at 43.3%, which is almost 3 times that of the next highest of anti-Jewish hate incidences at 15.2%.
Yet we don't see the same level of response to anti-Black hate by our government.
We will talk about that afterwards. So thank you for your comment. So now we're looking at, we look at our local statistics, okay? Because we know that the Montgomery County Police Department does a monthly bias report. And we just captured a moment in time for January of 2023 through September, where we saw 82 incidents against Black and African Americans, which does include our MCPS students. And in that 82 incidents, there were 61% or 50 incidents that occurred against our students within MCPS, which makes it an average of 9 incidents per month. So we also know from talking with our community and through the various means that we discussed earlier, that the Black community doesn't report many acts of hate bias. And so we think that the numbers are actually greater. And the reason why is because oftentimes they feel that no remedial action will be taken. And so we're also going to use anecdotal stories. So we know, for example, we had a couple who testified before the Committee Against Hate Violence, a Black-white biracial couple. They were on a daily evening walk when a white male in a car followed them and yelled racial slurs. They were terrified. When they called the police, no action was taken. So let's look at the data in terms of what action the police does take, because that's another reason that can be chilling for the Black and African American community. We know, as according to this chart, that the data suggests that Black African Americans are disproportionately charged with criminal activity as compared to whites. While that is occurring, we also see there appears to be a lower rate of prosecution when Black African Americans are victimized by hate bias crimes. This leads to, often may lead to distrust in the system. And that's why we think there's a lot of underreporting or either non-reporting. So we see a trend in perpetrators. A large majority of the hate crimes that are committed by white males who have expressed animus based on race, ethnicity, and ancestry. And they show this out with physical assault, intimidation by racial slurs, and vandalism or defacement of personal property. And again, we look at the data. This is another report that comes out by the FBI that talks about the perpetration of essentially domestic terrorism by white men against minority communities, and specifically against African American and Black communities. So we're talking about law enforcement. And so this slide is about messaging. And it's about when Montgomery County Police issued a message, and the message is here in Black, and what effect, if any, that message has on the Black and African American community. I'll let folks read it here, but what I want to turn your attention to is the police has taken steps to enhance the safety of our Jewish community. We know that anti-Semitism is a problem in Montgomery County. There is no doubt about that. And we applaud the police district, Montgomery County Police for making this statement. But when they make this statement, it doesn't necessarily acknowledge the other problems in our community, like Islamophobia. We know that many African Americans and Black Americans are also Muslim. And so when these messages come out, they may have an effect that may not be intended, but nonetheless exists. So we also looked at all the reports I said from Montgomery County and wanted to highlight some of these reports. And I think someone said these don't come in the news, which is true. One of the ones I thought was most striking was on the 16th of September, an unknown white driver pulled up to a pedestrian who had dropped something on the ground and said, pointing a gun at the person, "Pick up your shit, you effing N-word," and drove off. The police were called. Here's the case number. We also see a lot of racial slurs at a lot of the football games, all the games they have at MCPS. And so we see that sometimes reported, sometimes not. And we also see racial slurs and anti-Semitic activity on desks as a way of defacing the school property and sending a message. Other examples, anti-Black racial slur on a retaining wall. Someone called a school to say that they had planted a bomb because they preferred, because of their anti-Black, anti-Semitic views. And of course, in 2016, there was a news hung at Flower Valley Elementary School. And we go back to 2016 because this is really a problem throughout time. So we know that this has not changed. And so we go from time immemorial, we've seen issues of anti-hate bias and anti-bias or bias for Black and African Americans. So we also hear from our kids. And so we're going to hear a video about this shortly. But basically, a lot of them stop complaining because they believe that no one is listening. There was an instance in a school recently where there were a group of Black students in a class, and the white teacher said, "I'm sorry, I keep on confusing your names. You guys all look alike. So please forgive me." When a Black student complained about it to the administration, no action was taken. Only after the Black parents insisted on the issue being addressed and contacted the NAACP Parents Council was the issue addressed. So now we're going to go into a discussion with about one of our listening sessions. So I'm going to pull that up. Bear with me as I navigate my technical challenges.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Tiffany Kelly, and I'm the co-chair of the African American Black cohort of Montgomery County's Anti-Hate Task Force. Thank you for joining us this evening as we shed light on issues related to hate and bias within Montgomery County Public Schools. Let's get started. For nearly a century, schools for Black students in Montgomery County and throughout the South were denied the benefits provided to their entirely separate but supposedly equal white counterparts. In 1954, the unanimous Supreme Court decision in Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka changed the face of public schools forever. For the most part, integration in Montgomery County happened smoothly, if not slowly. and its school system was declared fully integrated by 1961. 70 years after Brown versus Board of Education, hate and bias and de facto segregation by race, ethnicity, language, and income continues to undermine student achievement in Montgomery County. MCPS community members believe that we over-discipline students of color. According to the chart on the screen, 87% of students who were recommended for expulsion in 2023 were African American or Latino. African Americans are the only racial ethnic group that is significantly overrepresented in suspensions relative to their total share of the population. They make up 21% of total school enrollment and account for 48% of suspensions. There continue to be concerns around the classroom experience of African American and Black students. According to the data provided by MCPS, the academic achievement of students who are Black and African American is significantly lower than their Asian and white classmates. The cohort recently had a listening session with MCPS that included nearly 100 MCPS students. The district detailed the efforts it's making to address hate and bias, but the students' experience sounded considerably different than what the district was describing. Please listen to our students explain in detail what they face in reporting hate and bias incidents.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we're gonna hear you.
Oh, I was one of the students Mr. Williams referred to speak, and I had a comment and question regarding some of recording incidents. So I changed my Zoom name because I wanted to stay anonymous. Is it okay for me to speak?
Yes.
Okay. So to give more context, I go to a majority school, and I know as a student, students don't typically want to go out their way to report incidents of hate unless it has had a major impact on them, because they may feel like it'll be more trouble than it's worth, and they themselves have been conditioned to deem it as minor. For instance, a friend of mine has had a teacher constantly make arrogant comments regarding race and has linked it to competence. This teacher has had a history of making uncomfortable comments regarding race. However, students are hesitant to take action because when reports have been made, no action has been taken. The teacher has held this reputation for years, so many students I have spoken to feel like it's a lost cause to complain. At my school, there are many instances similar to these where students have experienced microaggressions from teachers or their fellow classmates. In the internship I did over the summer, the Minority Scholars cohort talked about how when microaggressions build up and a person is constantly being told harmful statements, it diminishes their self-esteem. No one wants to build up the courage to talk to an adult and be dismissed and have their concerns pushed under the table. It sets a precedent. Given this, I want to ask how schools work to ensure the system put in place to report incidents are efficient, accessible, and change will be made.
What's next? We still have a lot of work to do, especially since the system that is designed to protect the well-being of students may not be functioning at the optimum level that is needed to fully and comprehensively address hate and bias in our schools.
All right, so that was our video with our young folks, and we actually had several stories, and we just wanted to highlight one to given our time constraints. So it's not just the students who have expressed issues or concerns about their treatment in the school system. We have another example of a Black parent who was in a field trip out of state with the band. They had an excursion out of state, between their playing. And he was with the rest of the parents, and one parent pulled him aside, actually put their hands on him and said, "What are you doing here? You don't belong." He was shocked. And when he said, "Well, no, I'm here for the high school students," she said, "But you're not one of us," and wouldn't let him go until she could find someone to remove him from the facility. It was only after the parent found his child that he was allowed to escape the hands of this person. The parent was very upset. The child was very upset. When they brought it to the attention of the school system, nothing was done again. It was only after several requests to address the issue that the school system, and with the threat of contacting the police, that the school system responded. Another example, a white varsity tennis team, majority white, there were some other minorities that were not African-American or Black, exchanged racially hateful and anti-Semitic texts in Snapchat. The texts were reported to the administration. That we don't know whether the students were disciplined because they don't share that information, but we do know that the report was not made to the Montgomery County Police Department, which is a requirement for Montgomery County school system. So we're seeing these are just instances where reporting is not occurring. So when you look back at the numbers that we provided, they are numbers that certainly reflect underreporting. So now we're going to talk about our recommendations. And again, there are many. We know that we have to synthesize them, but we wanted to share any and all with you from what we discussed from our surveys, from our review of the data, and from our listening sessions. And we divided the recommendations into 3 areas. One, focusing on the Montgomery County criminal justice system. The second, focusing on the Montgomery County public school system. And the third is on the community. So let's talk about our criminal justice system. Recommendation 1, the county council should augment the Committee Against Hate Violence by adding representation from the state's attorney's office in the courts to clearly identify and define the roots of motivations behind hate, to dismantle and eliminate established hate groups and organizations, to work in concert to identify mechanisms to prevent radicalization of perpetrators, and to work to de-radicalize known perpetrators of hate and hate crimes. We recommend that mandatory reporting requirement of hate bias by police be enforced. We know from our anecdotal evidence and also from the underreporting from other stories of underreporting that the police are not always reporting instances of hate bias. And so we believe that it's important that they do so that we're able to hold police accountable and to track the data in a way that can bring about meaningful change. We also encourage the criminal justice system to think about enhancing state and local victims funds to include extended payments for mental health crimes to care for victims of hate. We encourage ride-along program. It's a program that you can ride along with police department so that we know more about our police. Our police are our friends, I always say. It's important that we know what they're doing and that we are engaged in the process so that they continue to be, so that there is accountability. Ensure that messaging by police is factually accurate and assures all communities of police protections against hate bias. Okay, and then we have some others that I'll leave you to read later on about what we can do to increase arrests of white male perpetrators, also encourage the justice that should be afforded to victims, and work with the county and state legislators to bring about tougher guidelines, sentencing guidelines for perpetrators of hate crimes. So now we're going to talk about how we can end hate bias in our Montgomery County public schools. We recommend that there be a creation of a parent advisory committee with term limits that can meet directly with Superintendent McKnight and her kitchen cabinet so that they are reviewing the incidents of hate bias and work with the community to develop recommendations. Enforce the mandatory reporting requirement of hate incidents in schools. Again, we saw just in this presentation alone 2 examples where there was clearly evidence of hate and the administration either did not report or reported after repeated requests. And so we want this to be more of an automatic occurrence. And we also recommend planning an anti-hate month dedicated where circle talks, surveys, history, positive cultural activities can occur to celebrate the diversity of the county in the school district. We recommend that there be an addition of an anti-hate presentation or program at the middle school and high school levels where we're seeing a lot of the instances of hate and bias incidences. We encourage some accountability for teachers by having surveys to screen staff for anti-hate and bias. We recommend even small things like a visual representation that says, like a stop sign that says, hate is not welcome here. And we know that the MCPS has a multicultural advisory committee for that includes students and parents for the athletics department. We recommend something similar for MCPS as it relates to hate incidences and ways to figure out how we can make change. In addition, the Montgomery County School District commissioned a report from Wilmer Hill after they had the incident of hazing. And many of the recommendations there also could help address the bullying and the bad behavior of students that we've seen in the schools. We recommend that the school system revisit that report. We know that some administrators are not aware of the report, and I think that's can be a challenge if you expect people to change and they don't know what the change should be. Also, we know that the MCPS has a new hate bias incident form, and that is a great stride to addressing hate in our school system. This was a form that was created after the anti-racist audit. The challenge is a lot of people don't know about it. So we need to educate our administrators, our students, our parents about this form and the need to make it available. We should establish guidelines for parents that address the need to respect diversity and methods for conflict resolution between parents and students. And much like the Montgomery County Police Department publishes their hate bias incidents, we recommend that the school system do so as well. Now we're going to talk about ending hate bias in the Montgomery County community. We recommend that Montgomery County Council hold periodic listening sessions with Black and African American community throughout the county. And of course, there's an opportunity for them not to speak, but to listen, because I think that there is a lot to be said. And I think if there's a forum that everyone can come to express their concerns as it relates to hate violence, we could see, we could have a real flavor for the level of hate and bias in our communities. In addition to that, and not the second kind of session would be an informational session so that we can educate our community about the different services provided to the community so that they can feel protected and supported. We also recommend that the County Council work with the new Civil Rights Office of the Maryland State's Attorney General's Office to assist with the development of appropriate civil rights policies and laws for the state. We recommend that the Office of Human Rights increase their amount of funding for the partnership fund. We also recommend that that the County Council adopt a resolution, much like that adopted for anti-Semitism, for Islamophobia, that supports the Black and African American community. And we also recommend that we have more events like the Friendship Picnic, which bring diverse communities together in a way to an effort to educate and to build coalitions. Finally, I'll just say one more on this one. We recommend that the County Council facilitate or organize bystander training, because we are seeing, I think, at least especially in the schools, these instances are happening and people don't know how to respond or what to do. And so it would be helpful if we took some leadership and organized bystander training. I have my time at now 31 minutes, so I'm going to stop right there. And then I'm going to open up the floor to questions and answers. Okay, I see one hand up. Zam Bang, if I said that wrong, please correct me so that I can be better.
Hello, yes, it's Zyme like the time. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, great. So I don't know, I recognize Joseph Hooks. I went to high school with him. I don't know if he remembers this, but in Montgomery Village in Germantown, there was a police officer named Officer Stone, and he was a second generation officer. His father was Officer Stone Sr. All of my Black friends, I'm not Black, all of my Black friends in Montgomery Village and in Germantown, when we asked their fathers and their uncles, they knew Officer Stone's father. And my friends and we were often pulled over by Officer Stone II. And we had complained. My friend Jason was forced to eat manure and went to the hospital, had his stomach pumped, and sued the and he got $75,000, which is like nothing compared to what these other lawsuits we see people get. So I grew up in around the African American community when I moved here, and all of my friends had gone through this. I got pulled over one day; they all got thrown on the ground. I didn't get thrown on the ground; they all got handcuffed. This was very normal. So how can we force the police department to reopen those cases, look into those instances where people complained about racism against police, and take them serious now? Instead of before. Like, I asked the commissioner who's in charge of police, he is an African American man. I asked him, I said, what about Officer Stone? I asked him at the first anti-hate task force meeting. He said the father is gone, but the father would obviously be gone at this point because he would have reached retirement age. What about the son who had actually even lost a court case? Like, how can we go back and find this? And my other question I posted in the chat was, when I hit 27 and I head towards North area where it's known to be racist, all through Damascus and all the way to Thurmont, where we know everybody knows that's a very racist area. They still have marches out there of Klan marches and stuff till this day. So when we know that that's where those people live, and all these police cars are on driveways in those areas, how can we get these police officers to be in Montgomery County? Montgomery County is expensive. Maybe it's not easy for nurses who are by themselves or police officers who earn on their own to live in Montgomery County. How can we make it easier to get them amongst us? I mean, I feel like if they live amongst us and they're not living against radical racists, we have a better shot at surviving with them. Thank you.
No, thank you for your question. I just have a question because you mentioned Joseph. What graduation class for high school were you? So we get an understanding of the time frame. You're
I don't
talking
know. When did we graduate, Joseph? I don't remember that. Was it 2001 or 3 or what?
We graduated 2003, 20 years ago.
So 20 years ago, we're talking about issues, but that are still prevalent now. So I will initiate the answer and then invite my members of the cohort to also respond. We know that Montgomery County has commissioned a police commissioning group who look at the issues of policing and communities. And so I think the first step would be for us to bring this to the attention of the police community, see what if any impact they're looking at in terms of the history of race in our county. I mean, I think to your second point about what can we do to encourage others, that could be another police commission, which is a member of our community members from diverse and for different districts, to talk about how we can incentivize folks to become police, because I agree there's been some issues. We know that there is a bonus program going on, but we know that they are significantly understaffed and not necessarily always diverse. And so in my former life, we looked at how we could diversify the police departments beginning at the academy and before. So maybe even having a pipeline from our high school programs up so that we can encourage diverse populations to consider leadership and law enforcement. I'll ask if anyone else has an answer to that question. If not, I'll move on.
I just want to say, are you able to hear me? Because I am traveling. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say to the gentleman, I'm really sorry to hear of the experience of you and your peers. I grew up in the era of seeing Rodney King beaten. That's my first ever conscious memory of police brutality. Certainly has not been the last. And when this coalition started, we started with some team building and making sure that we understood that even though we are all of the same descent, African descent, we all had very different experiences and opinions. I personally have not had a good experience here in this county with police. I've been here for 5 years, and I live in fear daily for my son and all the men that are in my life. So, you know, we all have different and varying opinions of the level of police involvement in our county. And I just wanted to come on and say, I am really sorry for that experience. And I personally don't know what to do about it. But one thing that I raised in our last meeting is that the very systems that are supposed to protect us often cause us a great deal of harm. So we have some systems issues that we're struggling with, especially where we go for protection is one of the places that harms us. So I just wanted to express that.
Thank you. All right, so I have Zakiya here, Racial Justice Now.
Oh my goodness, it's Zakia. Zakia.
My apologies, Zakia. Thank you.
Okay, okay.
Are you going to ask a question?
Y'all hear me?
Yeah, slightly. Can you increase
Hello?
your volume? Yeah.
I can't hear you. Okay.
All right, we'll come back to Zakia so she can
All
get
right,
her.
can you all hear me now?
Can you guys hear? Thumbs up or thumbs down? We have half and
I
half.
don't know why I can't hear you.
Very faint.
Man, where do I start? This is I feel like this is indicative.
Can you
of why
start
we
closer to the
never
microphone
invited
so
me
we
to
can
be
hear
part of
you?
these
Zakia,
things.
Zakia, talk real close. Because
Okay,
you're
I can't hear.
There you go. There you go.
Just a minute.
Okay.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Can
You
you all
got
hear
it.
now?
Yeah. Thank you.
Can somebody put it in the chat whether you can hear me? Because I can't hear y'all.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Yeah, put it in the
Okay,
chat.
great. So anyway, this conversation is indicative why I realize I'm never invited part of these types of systems. Number one, I am definitely, a little upset that I didn't hear or any type of training around the system and how that is also anti-bullying. And any suggestion or recommendation.
What?
We're not hearing it.
Hear you. Put your question or your statement in the chat.
In the chat.
Yeah, that was better. Yeah, put it in the chat.
I'm so sorry because I know you have some meaningful things to say. So I apologize for that. We're going to move on to Richard Allen, and also Sue Stoloff. They're both members of the Committee Against Hate Violence. So thank you both for coming and supporting the cohort. Richard, go ahead and ask your question.
Yes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. I'm going to ask a question. I put it in the chat also, but I mean, I've asked it at our, Committee Against Hate Violence meetings as well. And was there any recommendation for amending the Montgomery County Human Rights Ordinance to increase monetary damages and the level of legal enforcement for adult perpetrators? In other words, to increase enforcement to that of a felony, which I think currently it's a misdemeanor. And of course, this is enforced by the Montgomery County Police Department. So hopefully I'm not being redundant, but it is a question that still strikes me.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes, but let me go ahead and answer Richard, and then we'll come back to you. Is that okay? Okay. So Richard, the answer to your question is yes. We didn't say it with specificity, but we will certainly add from misdemeanor to felony. We did make 2 points about increasing damages and also increasing accountability with the state's attorney's office. And so we are looking at this issue as well as working with the Office of the Attorney General for Maryland State. So we will note that in our document as we do our final report.
Okay, Lisa. So I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off a little bit when you were, I apologize for that. But so in other words, to increase a proven violation of an adult, I'm saying now in particular, to that of a felony, to be implemented by the Montgomery County Police Department in investigations and in the findings, and then with working with the Human Rights Commission, correct?
Correct.
I lost. Okay, that's all I had to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Zakia, are you back?
Yes.
Excellent.
I'm not sure how much was translated earlier, but I guess I can start over. I asked in the chat to whoever is organizing this, in the process, of this group and the things that you all looked at, was there any, I guess, work done around anti-Black systemic oppression and hate? Because the police themselves actually operate as an anti-Black institution and system. That's not hyperbole, that's fact. I mean, there's overwhelming evidence of that, not just in Montgomery County, but obviously in many jurisdictions throughout this country, because anti-Blackness is so steeped in every system. The other piece is the county prosecutor himself, I believe, is anti-Black, as evidence of how he continues to overcharge Black children and boys, Black boys in particular. So I guess as a member of the Montgomery County community, I would love, to see what recourse or what thoughts this particular group has put into that, and what would those remedies look like in terms of dealing with anti-Blackness and anti-Black hate from the system's perspective. We've talked about individual hate and just regular people, but it's the people that's in power that I believe, and as the evidence will show, that are actually most harmful to us as a community.
I think that's a good, yeah. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I'll make an attempt. Shakia, I think your observations are spot on. And certainly there's enough outcome evidence that would support that. Just recently, the state's attorney's office issued information indicating that Black and brown boys and men and people in general are 65% of the arrested, prosecuted, convicted, and incarcerated in this county. Of course, we know combined, maybe they make up maybe 40, less than 40% of that population. We also find that the state's attorney's office is moving towards a new case management system, wherein it would track information that you alluded to. And so we hope in the near future, we will be able to delineate the very things that you pointed out. The old system, they have admittedly said, is broken. Our hope is that, the new system is not a result of garbage in and garbage out. But for us to move, we certainly have to have evidence, sustainable evidence. But we see it. Black men and boys still dominate our prisons, detention. They are certainly the most charged and arrested. We see even in MCPS, the disparity and suspensions and expulsions impacting African-American boys. So definitely you're spot on, but to move further, we need to really solidify that evidence and, directly correlate it to the outcomes that we're seeing.
No, okay, I want to be sure you understood my question. Is the answer to the question that I asked, are you saying a new tracking system is supposed to do what exactly? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure.
Well, a new case management system as designed so far, and we just got a preliminary preview of it, will hopefully capture a lot of the data that you're suggesting should be captured, further supporting the disparities in our criminal justice system occurring against African American people.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not talking about data specifically. I'm talking about the county prosecutor himself is anti-Black. We just saw that as an example of overcharging a young man in the Bethesda fight. He has discretion. I'm not a fool. He continues to use that discretion to charge kids and ruin their lives as adults.
Yeah, but I started off by saying that I didn't disagree with you. All I'm saying is, ma'am, is that we now have a system we hope will work to further prove what you're saying. So as they collect that data, we want to be sure that it's actually supporting the outcomes that you have observed. There will be some community input on this new data collection system as well. And also, we hope, as stated, it will also gather information to be used to create policies that might lead to new laws or that would further address what you've raised. So it's a process, of course, and I'm not disagreeing with you. The outcomes that we see certainly might support that. But this new system, I think, will give us even more hard evidence to move along the spectrum of creating more policies and that will address what you just mentioned.
Mr. Ron, this is Reverend Boney. I think I would like to add to your comment. I think that in cases where it's clear, especially if these are elected officials, and then we as a community have an obligation to hold people accountable. If someone is elected to office that is not fairly and equitably representing all of our people, then it's to us to do whatever we can to make sure that person does not get back into office. We've got to mobilize with the groups. I see a hand up from Sister Linda Plummer, NAACP. We've got to coordinate amongst our groups to make sure that that person is removed from office. There has to be that accountability. They can't do these kinds of things and just assume they're going to get back into office. We've got to show them that no, that is not acceptable.
Yeah,
You
I would
answered
agree with
my
you.
question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for raising that question, Zakia. If you go back and view our past meetings, that is an issue that was repeatedly raised, especially by me. I think that we are policy to death. The question is the application of policy, which is where the systemic breakdown occurs. We know it's happening. If and when people are prosecuted, they are typically acquitted. There is nothing that comes of it. So we can have as many laws as we want to have, but if they're not applied in a manner that is going to lead to accountability of these failures, we're going to continue to have a systemic issue. And I've even stated that we will probably walk away from this process with more answers than, questions than answers. I don't know how to stop this systemic issue when people are not held accountable to laws and policy that are already present. So I don't have an answer. I just know that it is a continual issue.
I just want to quickly piggyback on what Reverend Boney just mentioned.
Before we say anything else, I want you to note that we have other questions. So this will be the last statement. I did have.
Sure, I just said, yeah, surely.
Okay.
And that the electoral process in the county would also include the state's attorney. Mr. Kia just alleged that he has been indifferent and maybe racist in the prosecution of
He is.
And so let us understand that we elected him once, twice, 3 times, and 4 times. He is in his 4th term, okay? So what it means is, yeah, we need to use the electoral process. We had the opportunity of electing a Black male and or female during the last election of the state's attorneys. What do? We re-elected the current state's attorney, whom you allege is racist. So I just want to put that out there.
Okay, Ron, I'm not gonna say that you're tempting me, but I'm gonna keep us on track. So my next question is, I'm in the chat, and this is the question about my multicultural church has experienced break-ins and other scary issues like homelessness, people breaking in and sleeping in the sanctuary, but it does not get the same police coverage or attention that synagogues receive in the same neighborhood. How do we prove hate toward our church so that we too can also receive protection? Are synagogues receiving protection because of the history of anti-Semitism? So what do we need to prove? Okay, now that is an interesting question. So I'm not necessarily the best to answer that because I think this is more of a police question. But I will say this, that working with the Office of Community Engagement, any place of worship should contact their district to identify that there is an issue with their sanctuary. And the idea is that the Office of Community Engagement is supposed to send a police officer out to be a partner and to work with that place of worship to ensure that the folks who attend there are protected. In instances where you may see synagogues receiving protection is because they are paying for it privately. There's also, we've just recognized some state and local grants whereby places of worship can apply for funding so they can also further buttress the security of their church. But certainly if there is an issue with your church, I encourage you to actually reach out to me as the chair of the Committee Against Hate Violence, because we do have a partnership with the police. and to identify this issue. The challenge is that we know that this is happening systemically, may be happening systemically in our communities. And so we only know as much as we know until folks tell us. And so clearly the police department is interested in protecting all folk. And when they don't think that when they're not doing that, it's our job to hold them accountable. And so I encourage you to reach out to me directly. I'll send you my email, but also to work with the community engagement officer. The police department has a program called CRAZE, where they will come out and do training about safety. They also will do audits for your place of worship to identify any weaknesses in the security, in addition to identifying that there are grants possible. So I don't know if anyone else has an add to that question and answer.
Lisa, I'd like to add something to that. I think there should be a greater outcry from the Black community. In our report, we presented that 43% of the hate bias incidents are happening because of hatred against African Americans, Blacks. Where is the outcry? Okay, I'm not criticizing any of the other groups. I'm saying that we should have a louder outcry. That's a big number. Where is the outcry that's a high number? What's being done about that number for our community? I think it's to us to have a greater outcry about issues that we're having.
Thank you, Reverend Boney. Richard.
Well, we need to exercise the political power that we have as a community. We need to be accountable to ourselves. And that's that's going to be the best way for change to occur involving us as African Americans and in Montgomery County, Maryland. And again, we have to create systems that are accountable and leadership that is accountable. You know, whatever the color of the person, a leader should be accountable.
Thank you, Richard. We have one more question in the chat, and then we're going to cede the floor to Council Member Will Jawando. So just one more question, and then we'll move on to our council member present. How can we tell everyone in the county that we are here to fight for them? We need the people to know that when they are discriminated against in schools, courts, or public, they can come to this group for assistance. Only a handful of people know about this. Can we mobilize and have town halls all throughout the county? And can this group hold assemblies in every school in the county? Who wants to take that one? Okay.
I personally do go around to our schools because I believe that the student voice is often left out, as it is with any community that is affected the absolute most. I totally agree that we do need to hear from people because things that are designed may not be working well. And we only know that when we hear from the people that it's supposed to help. So I'm a big proponent of listening, town halls, but following that, real actionable steps.
And I think it's important that we know that I think we should have more people here. So I know that we have a lot of people that I'm looking at right now are community leaders for Montgomery County who've made great efforts. We've seen Linda, we've seen Reverend Boney, we see Sue Stoloff. There are a lot of folks on this in this group here. And so we know the struggle, we do the struggle, and we are the struggle. And so we to the extent that there are recommendations about how we can get the word out or make it more synergistic, it's really important that we hear from folks. We've heard that outreach on a social media a platform is helpful, maybe word of mouth. Many members of the Black community don't feel comfortable and when they're summoned by the police to have a community meeting, so maybe come up with our ideas. We know that Chief Manger used to have something called Chat with the Chief, and he picked the places that people where there was a high density of minorities. And so that's, ideas that we can float, but this is always a constant struggle. All of our meetings are public, so we welcome all the public. And so the idea is, how can we get the public to be interested, not just in their issue, but in all issues? I see Director Stowe, you'll have the last question before we have Council Member Will Jawando. Go ahead, Director Stowe.
Thank you, Lisa. And to the question having been asked, I'm just going to just simply suggest then that one of the things we hope to get from this group would be then that the ideas and recommendations that end up getting not only supported by county council, but also by the administration might be a pathway to doing better in terms of community outreach and access then to communities. And again, I do echo Lisa's point about going to where communities actually are and not having them come always to a government site. So we will take these initiatives with the Office of Human Rights and certainly with the Human Rights Commission and also the Committee Against Hate Violence. We might then be the persons who could come on board and take some of the ideas and actually have them become part of our work plan going forward in terms of, again, providing greater access and great information about what is going on and what resources are out there. I think the other part of that course is to make real sure that people know how to access what we currently do and do a better job of that as well. So we're taking all of this that I'm hearing tonight and certainly would be hearing throughout the other additional cohort groups to, again, better plan and leverage what we already are doing to better serve the community, to really understand what the issues and needs are. I should tell you too that part of our group, the Committee Against Hate Violence, does include members from Montgomery County Public Schools who actually are on the committee, along with Montgomery College as well. So we try to involve persons who can and are part of trying to create opportunities to not only better communicate with the overall community, but also to better serve those communities. And so please know that we are listening to this. We would be hearing from the additional cohorts that are yet to actually report, but know then there will be something done with what we hear and it'll be actually part of our work plan. So I think then that the town halls will be a certain way to go about this. Also other listening sessions that are less maybe intimidating to the town hall, that might be more intimate. Whatever it takes to get it done, we can in fact make that be part of our plan going forward.
Lisa,
Yes.
am I allowed to share the town halls that Racial Justice Now is working with the Montgomery County Collaboration Council to have? Because we're already ahead of the game on the town halls. There'll be 3 of them in different parts of the county, specifically around the OLO report, and it'll be specifically centered on Black families and students and children in this community. The first one is Saturday, November 4th, in Gaithersburg at the rec center there from 1 to 3 p.m. And then the second one will be in White Oak at the White Oak Middle School, same time, 1 to 3 p.m. The third one is to be determined. But the Montgomery County Collaboration Council and Racial Justice Now has joined forces to do exactly what people have just suggested in terms of hearing more from families, Black families and students. So thank you.
Thank you, Zakia. All right, we're going to stop talking because we're going to let Mr. Honorable Council Member Will Juando speak, and that will conclude our program.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Good to be with you all. And I've been listening here for a little while. Marisa from my team, and we've been on all the other ones represented, but wanted to make sure I joined tonight. It just came from a event for the Greater DC Diaper Bank, which provides diapers to folks all over our region. A lot of Black folks too that need it. Over 11 million last year. I wanted to say a couple things. You know, Reverend Boney, I heard your point. The problem, in my estimation, one of the main problems with this, because the point that you brought up, we are against all hate, all discrimination, all bias, right? We are all in lockstep with that. It all is the fruit of the same poisonous tree. But with the Black community in particular, and I want to thank Selena Singleton and Berta for their coordination and work throughout this process, and the council president for kicking it off. The problem is, or one of the many problems is, anti-Black racism is so American and it's so normalized that it is just we collectively have become desensitized to it. Because when you look at those numbers, even when you talk about some of the other groups that are facing discrimination and hate and bias right now, we're like the baseline. We are the majority. We are always, it's always there for us. You know, that 43% number that you mentioned. And unfortunately, part of our survival tactic has become just to deal with it. And that's not appropriate. And I think that we need to, continue to speak out and organize. And you've seen that over the last several years with the movement for Black Lives and other things that have come up in younger people. You know, I don't know why. I don't know if anyone from Young People for Progress or some of these younger groups, I know we have Racial Justice Now represented, but we need to create that intergenerational conversation to bring new energy to remind folks, about where we've been and where we are. You know, I certainly try to play that role on the council and in the work that we do. We also need to fund Jim Stowe's office. You know, he always comes to us, and I've given him more work than anybody as far as passing new anti-discrimination laws, and he comes to us politely every year and says, well, you know, we used to have this many people and we have this many people now, and we have to enforce this much, you know, things like the Crown Act, which I know you all supported. I see Selena rocking her protective hairstyle there. You know, like, we need to, it's great to have it on the books, but if you don't have enforcement mechanisms and if you don't fund the office, it doesn't mean much. And that would not just help Black community, it'd help everybody. That's something that I think we should all, if that doesn't come out of this group, I don't know what we're doing. And so I hope that's, you know, that's a recommendation that comes out, because if we really are serious about it, we need to fund the office that has a big role in enforcing our anti-discrimination laws. That would be one thing. The other thing I'd say, and then the educational component. You know, I was disheartened to hear that MCPS, their participation in this has been spotty. I don't know if anyone's here tonight, but I'm certainly, as chair of the education committee, going to make sure that, you know, I let them know that they need to be fully participating in this process. I know there's a general commitment, but that needs to be demonstrated through participating in efforts like this, so that we know what the other hand is doing. And then finally, we have to be more organized in our advocacy. I think that was a point that I heard several people bring up. And the squeaky wheel does get the oil. And I know we've been the squeaky wheel for several centuries, rightly so, but it's still happening. So I want you all to tell me how I can, you know, help in amplifying those voices together with you all. So one, and then I finally just say thank you for participating. I know many of you have been doing this work for a long time and care about our community deeply. Tiffany mentioned this. We just had a hearing in Education and Culture just earlier this week on the school to prison pipeline report that OLO did. And it shows a stubborn persistence. You know, Black students are half of the suspensions, and half of the, you know, the numbers have not moved. While the overall numbers have gone down, the disparities have remained, and that's across the board. And so we still have a lot of work to do in our communities. So I'm in the fight with you, and just appreciate you all taking the time, and look forward to seeing the recommendations and working with you to implement.
Thank you. Selena, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jawando. I'm actually going to hand it over to Bertha.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Jawando. Thanks to the Black African American cohort for that wonderful presentation. I just wanted to remind everyone that our next full anti-hate task force meeting will be on November 9th at 7 p.m. when the Asian AAPI cohort and the LGBTQ+ cohort will be presenting their recommendations. So please join us. We'll be sharing the registration link with everyone and posted it on our website, which I'm going to include in our chat as well. So with that, have a great night, everyone. Thanks. Thank you again for joining us.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.